everyone. Welcome. Nice to see you guys and see many, many friends from all over the world. I know you have been waiting for us a couple of minutes. So we are about to start this panel. Welcome. We're very glad that you're here. And hopefully this panel will be very insightful for you. So let's start. First of all, I would like to ask everyone to put their cameras off and kindly unmute yourselves so that no noise and interruptions are being made. And also, please feel free to have comments and write comments or questions in the chat that we have, and we will be more than happy to answer them. I would like also to let you know that in this global panel, we have awesome panelists. And let me introduce myself first. My name is Adriana Mendoza. I'm from a magical country called Colombia, and I am the CEO of MoveMinds for South America. And we have other awesome panelists joining us. So let's start with one that is very far away right now, 13 hours. We have a distance of 13 hours. Now it's 9 p.m. and he wonderfully wanted to join us. So welcome George Evelyn, which is the CEO of Elementrix. And you have a role that I haven't heard before, which is Chief of Reimagineer.
Hi,
so what is that
Adriana.
about, George?
Hi, Adriana. Selamat malam from Malaysia. I'm an Australian who lives in Malaysia the last 15 years. Yeah, thanks very much for having me. Chief Reimagineer, it's about learning in a digitally enabled world. It's about reimagining what you do. It's about unlearning and relearning and rethinking about what you do. And so that's what the Reimagineer comes from.
Great. And I understand Elementrix is a very innovative digital learning company based in Malaysia with a very interesting approach to increase effectiveness on digital learning in organizations. So you're more than welcome, George. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Adriana. I like the way you talk. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. And we also have Edmund Lai, which it's 9 p.m., right? In China, right, Edmund?
That's correct.
Okay,
Hello, Adriana.
Thank you as well for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Adriana. 你好, everyone. 欢迎来到 this panel, which means welcome to this panel.
Oh, wow. It's a global panel, so here we learn also languages.
Yes.
Okay, and let me tell you a little bit more about Edmund. He's the managing director of Learning Gym, one of the most successful companies in China in digital learning with fantastic micro-learning solutions. So more than welcome, Edmund. And we also have Kartik, which you are not very far away, only 10 hours of distance. Only 10 hours.
Practically a neighbor for you, Adriana. Thank you. That's everyone. Nice to have all of you.
So how do you say hello and welcome in your language?
Namaste.
Ah, and like this?
Simple, yes. Namaste with a bow to the head or just a little slight nod should get people to understand what you're saying.
Perfect.
Yes.
So Kartik, you're the CEO of Inspire One Technologies, a company based in India focused on improving sales force productivity using gamified micro-learning.
That is correct.
So more than welcome. So
thank you very much.
George, Edmund, Kartik are our associates of MoveMinds, and we work together to bring global projects come true. And we also have Victoria Holtz, which is from MoveMinds. And Vicky, you're from Mexico, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I didn't say hello and welcome in Spanish, so to give you the turn.
Okay, perfect. Bienvenidos todos. Me da mucho gusto estar con ustedes en este panel. And I will switch to English. So welcome everyone. Very happy to be with you in this panel. And very happy to have friends from all over the world, which is an amazing experience, you know, to work together with these absolute incredible people. And also to have incredible people connected now in the panel. So welcome everyone.
Thank you, Vicky. And you're the CEO of Move Minds in Latin America. Something that is amazing about Vicky is that she has been in charge of developing unique solutions in the digital world, such as interactive avatars and a unique app that measures growth and also measures people growth and business growth. And this app has been recognized by Silicon Valley and USC as best in class. So we will be more than happy to hear more about that.
Thank you.
So welcome you all. We are going to address a very interesting topic. And nowadays is very interesting because we have found that more than ever, companies have moved to remote work environments. And this has not only changed the way of working, but also has changed the way of learning. As never before, organizations are moving forward to a digital learning, and it is expected that by 2025, it will grow twice as much as it is today. Then the challenge is to make digital learning work and be able to upskill people on these complex times and prepare them for the future. That's why we chose as a theme how to leverage digital learning in complex times. And I think one of the best ways to start is to go to the fundamentals, and is to be able to align on what does it mean digital learning. And Kartik, I will give you the opportunity to explain us, for you, what does digital learning mean?
Sure. Thanks again, Adriana. I think it's a very important question to kick off the discussion. And I may want to just rephrase the question a little bit, because the way we want to think about it is that there's no one right answer or one wrong answer to what digital learning is. Instead, perhaps we need to think about what digital learning can be. I think before maybe 4 or 5 years ago, for a lot of organizations, it was a fairly straight line to walk, where you effectively needed to think about e-learning content, SCORM-related content, web-based training, and a traditional LMS in which that content was delivered and hosted. But fast forward to today, and I think in another couple of years, even more so, we know that the landscape is a lot more complex. So in that sense, I think it's important to think of what are the different technologies that are there. And by technologies, I don't just mean the technical part, I even mean disciplines. What other disciplines and technologies are there that can come together to create a truly digital experience, right? And I think when you introduced the panelists, some keywords that came up are very representative of digital learning today. So for example, our colleague Vicky and Edmund do a lot of work in micro-learning. It's a very core part of what companies define or describe as digital learning. We also talked about gamification. That again is another core aspect of what digital learning can be. As the chief reimagineer, George and his team do a fantastic job when it comes to AR and VR, a completely great avenue for creating digital learning experiences. So as you can see, there are different diversified routes that one can take to create a digital learning experience. And that's what's exciting. And at the same time, that's also what's very challenging about digital learning, that it's an ever expanding universe of different disciplines, and no one all-encompassing definition can do justice.
Love it. And I like the way you say it. It's more about what digital learning could be and how it would be changing with this environment that we're having right now.
Right.
Great. Um, and also, I think that talking about the future, we should also talk about the trends that we are having on digital learning. So, Edmund, I would like to know your insight on which are those 10 trends that we're having on digital learning.
Yes, sure, Adriana. Actually, to follow up on Kartik's comments onto that, many people seems to have an understanding of saying that why do we need to have digital learning? What is going to be happening in the near futures? Why is this happening? My simple answer to that, actually, I have prepared a slide to show the 10 trends to everyone. Adrian, if you could share it. Brilliant.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, here are the 10 digitalizations learning trends that is happening because of these trends that is happening from the learning behavior of our learner with our newer generations. Hence, the technology is evolving to fit their needs. So from my comments is that digital learning is not happening because the technology is evolving. It's actually our learning behavior, especially with the newer generations. They have a different mindset. They have a completely different way of learning as well. I've just simply picked a couple of them. It's like they want to be convenient. The new generations, they want it to happen to learn anytime, anywhere. It's just about with anyone. And a second one is the diversity that I think is most important. Previously, it was very easy for any of us to sit down in a classroom for 2 days. It wouldn't be any problem at all. But now, if you put 20 people in a room for 2 days, they get overwhelmed, they get headaches and everything. But with the new diversity of way of learning, we could have, like Kartik was saying, that e-learning, we could have micro-learning, we could have live streaming, we could have video, we could have animations, we could have VR, a different approach of learning methodology as well. So from my perspective is we really need to think about how our future learners, their behavior is going to happen for these 10 trends that is happening. From the wording itself is very self-explanatory, like say expert guidance, they can find all the conceptual theories online, Google it, they just can find the answers. But when it comes to practice, they need people with the expertise to guide them through. So they are looking for guidance. They're not looking for the conceptual explanation. So we need to take into considerations what is happening around the world, what are the learners they want in order to create the digital learning path for our learners. So with these 10 simple trends that I'm showing on this slide, that you could simply take away and see from my, for the corporate learning that we're introducing, does this 10 trends fit into the learning path that we have created for our learners? If there's as many as the trends that is included, there's a more likely chance that your digital learning is going to be successful. So it's just a simple way for us to measure it as well. So Adriana?
Thank you, Edmund. And I completely agree with you that it also has to do with the mindset. So we don't only have to adopt learning, digital learning, but also to adapt it to the mindset that is continuously changing on participants.
That's correct.
Thanks. And keeping that in mind, I mean, these are the trends that you're seeing right now, and probably there are some organizations that haven't begun yet. They haven't had any chance to put digital learning in their organizations, in their companies. So I would like to ask you, George, for those organizations and companies that haven't started yet, what would be your recommendation? How could they begin? Where should they start?
I'll tell you where not to start. Don't start with technology, all right? And so what the starting point is, it starts with people. What are we trying to achieve? And what we find is organizations, they get excited about a technology and then try to fit that around people's needs. We're dealing with a major organization right now, and they're wondering why they're having such a low adoption rate with a very expensive learning experience platform. And I spoke to one of the, they've got factories, they've got offices, HQ, and I spoke to one of the factory managers, and the factory manager said, you know, in this world where our people can choose whether to learn or not because it's off one of these, do they really understand my factory people? Do they understand how we learn? Do they understand us? I was at a conference in London, and a key message was that we need to understand learners as we've never understood before. We had one, it was a successful case study. What the speaker said was, we spent 3 days just with the managers to understand them and their context and how they learn better. So that's the first critical point, is it's understand your learners. Because in the old world of learning, your learners came to you, they had no choice. Now you have to go to them. The second one is, don't try to copy your classroom experience and try to squeeze it into a digital format, right? So this is where you asked me about the reimagineer. It's about reimagining how you can do things. And technology enables you to do things that were not possible. It enables learning reinforcement to happen. It enables a level of control or analytics from the learning and development department. So if I was going to say two key points, and there are many points, it's just start with understanding your learners and be very aware. Don't try to copy what you've done and try to put it into a virtual environment. You know, there's lots of messages, Adriana, and you know, I've been given 3 minutes to answer the question, so Edmund is going to have a go at me if I exceed my time, so I better not take more time.
I'm sure he will give you more time, right, Edmund? But great 2 points, great 2 key points, George. Thanks very much. And I don't know if the panelists have something else to say regarding on where to start. Vicky, you're unmuted.
I'm muted, thank you. This is, you know, part of the digital technology. So I would only like to add, you know, to just have an LMS doesn't mean you have digital learning. Many companies say, do you have digital learning? Yes, I have an LMS. No, that's not digital learning. That's just to have an LMS. And many companies have LMSs nobody uses. No, they spend a lot of money and a lot of resources to get a beautiful LMS, to get seminars from all over the world. And I have seen so many companies, so many Fortune 500 that have incredible amount of courses nobody takes and nobody even knows those exist. So it's not only about creating the environment, it's about making people be engaged and really enjoying the digital learning, make them part of the experience. Today, if you only have a place where you have courses, and you're not involving people in crowd learning, in content development, in making the content yours, then you are not really being as modern as you should be at this moment.
Sure, it has to do with being participant centric. And engaging with the experience. Great. Thank you, Vicky, for your insight. And, after, I don't know if you have had in your company's experience on a framework that could help implement digital solutions in a better way, probably in a more effective way. a framework that could help this audience that is hearing us on how to do it more effectively. So, Edmund, I understand you have a framework that you often use, right?
Yes, that's correct. Well, because as George previously mentions about one point that is, don't try to fit whatever's offline, from a classroom and just shift it into online. With like Victoria is saying that, having a LMS doesn't mean that you have the right digital learning path. Well, that is the most common mistakes that nowadays people are making, especially with the COVID-19's happening. They're not able to come face-to-face at this stage. So what do? Simple. I'll have a Zoom conference, I'll have every staff on board and I'll get the trainer who presented the offline programs, just do it online. That was it. But that is not the way how the digital world works. We kind of have to break down everything that was happening in a offline way, and then build it into little Lego blocks, and then make it into a cyber world learning path. Well, I do have a very simple 5-step elements, and then place it into a framework that could show everyone. So, Adriana, if you could just share the 5 elements that I have over here. So these are the 5 elements that actually happens offline as well. We do have the trainers that are teaching us. We have the delegate, the learners to learn. Then they get to practice and they get measures, and in the end, they'll get evaluated. So how are we going to have these 5 simple elements separated and then re-engineering it and then make it into a different framework? Let me tell you step by step. For the first one is teach. Well, at a traditional classroom, obviously, we'll have a trainers. That's I'm sure everyone could understand it. But whereas at the online learning, especially with us, that we will actually have virtual facilitators. In some way, Adriana, at this point is you, and then we'll have a virtual instructor. At this point, might be other panelists that would be helping us. At some points that we will have a sponsor or experts that would help us to guide us rather on a very specific experience or product knowledge terms of individuals that would help us. And obviously, because of the technologies, now there's different live broadcasts, they have like different LMS, there's many elements that would involve technicals. And we do need a technical assistant to help us on the online learning side. So there is already a different roles that is happening from the online stages here as well. So just by this, the teach element, we'll have to separate different role. So we need to elect different people from our company to complete the teach elements. And for the next one is the learning part. Well, at the learning part in the traditionals, the next slide, the traditionals is a classroom. Obviously, it's very simple. It's the left side. Normally it happens at offline classrooms, but on the online learning, there's many ways that we could present it to our audience. Maybe we'll be using our LMS on top of it. E-learning. Maybe we're on the right corners. There's a broadcast. Where I can show the PowerPoint. I have the instructor presenting, and I have the chat rooms that people could comments during it. And then on the left bottom, there's videos that people could just stream it. Or sometimes we could even have e-documents that could just send out to audience for them to read anytime, anywhere to learn as well. So there's a different method for people to learn on online stages. So there's not only that the learners not only can learn it from the offline classroom, but they can do it at a very different channel as well. So we can bite-size it and make it happen at different stages. So this also brings me to the next level of the practice. Next slide is the practice. Yes. For the traditional classroom, normally we'll do the role play, we'll have the group discussions, and sometimes we'll do the board game as well. Whereas at online, there's many, many different ways that we could make people to practice. The most fundamentals is the mini games, you know, gamifications. It happens all around. You know, we start them off with, you know, different kind of a level. They could go to level 1, answering some questions. Level 2, they have to complete some missions, work related, obviously. And then once they have gone past that, they will have submit the answers into this. There's one very practical differences that I want to show here. If you remember, during offline classrooms, very often when a trainers have completed conceptual trainings, he often asks in the room of people saying that, look, this is here the situations. Anyone else has any comments? So 1 or 2 of people would put their hands up and, you know, comment as they would. But in the online areas, I can make everyone answer that questions. I can gain everyone's ideas. I can gain all their best practice throughout the platforms that I provided to them. So instead of just getting 1 or 2 comments, I'm able to collect maybe 20, 30 of brilliant ideas. And once I've collected that, I can select the most practical way of doing of that discussions that we're having. And then we can elaborate that particular individual's insight to inspire others as well, so that people are truly learning from each other's. So this is a completely different concept when it comes to practice. I'm able to collect more idea online. I'm able to reflect the more insights that people are practical at the front line. So when it comes to practice, we really need to think carefully what sort of, you know, way that we would assign to our learners so that we're able to grasp that ideas, those concepts from them. So this is the third element that we've come to it. And the fourth one is to measures. Well, that is very simple and very straightforward as well. Well, in the traditional classroom, we very often have handouts, you know, with questions asked, you know, with the style and some of it, some tests as well. But online, well, we can make it a little bit more fun. You know, we could have a little bit of quizzes. We could have a little bit of tests, you know, make it more animated rather than just text, you know, just multiple choice ticking of it. We could make it more interesting at that point. So it's more fun. So remember on the diversity, that the trends that I'm saying, that people get more excited with when it comes down with that learning as well. Obviously, last but not least is the evaluations. For that, well, previously it was very easy for us to do, you know, it was one-to-one or one-to-many, we're doing offline coaching, that sort of things. But again, this is very much similar to the practice that I was saying, that I could get a lot of people on Zoom, like here, you know, asking people to share their best case, and then we could do an online tutorial like what we are doing now. You know, we're sharing the brilliance minds, you know, with George Evelyn, with Kartik, with Victoria's, with everyone, so that we can discuss all our super brain-minded, how this digital learnings could bring us together. And then we could comment onto that. We can discuss onto that as well, so that we can share many ideas. We don't have to clutter into one classroom to do this. It just can happen anytime, anywhere. So once we've break these 5 elements into blocks, well, because of us Learning James, we've been working with movements for quite a while now. We actually have been using this model since 2016. It wasn't because of COVID-19 that bring us to this. It was because that we know that there's the new generation, the way of their learning is completely different. So once we have broken down the offline learning blocks, you know, united, making into different mini blocks, then we have to provide a learning path online for our learners. Obviously, we can't put all those chunks together into just 2 days and force them to complete it. So it makes more sense that I have a longer learning journey, but a little bit more bite size onto here. Here's a very simple framework that, you know, 3 different states, pre, during, and after as well. We kind of set up an interactive learning platform for them to gain onto this. You know, they are able to gather together in the chat groups. You know, we announce all the regulations. And then when it comes to during, we will place the learning, the teaching, the learning, the practice, the measures, the evaluations all into the 21 days of blended learning, so that they are able to learn bite-sized, bit by bits. They learn it, they practice it, they get measures, and they get evaluated. And then we complete this cycle throughout this 21 days. Instead of doing all at one goes, we take our time. We give them time to learn a bite size and then get them to practice, and then we give them feedback. It is a more simplific way for them to get actually the hard skills going. Previously, with just 2-day offline programs, very often people would just get crazy and forget about other learning parts. They only remember bits and bob of whatever that was provided. But over here, we're able to help them, to guide them through this 21 days with those learning paths that we have created. And obviously, because it's online, everything is recorded, everything that we have provided, that is, we have all the data. So when after, we're able to collect all those best scenario, we're able to collect those best tasks, all the highlights, consolidate it and file it and send it to all the learners. So they have a different type of a file rather than just a textbook that they leave normally 2 days. So this is a framework. I don't have much time as well because I have to leave some more time for others. But if anyone are interested in it, we can approach to Move Minds or even to me. I am more than happy to elaborate more on how we design on this framework. And last but not least, I just want to show this. This is a learning platform that we use. Is a platform that is globally known. I basically broke down offline programs into online. And obviously, this is not a one-go system. It's a 21 days. We send them those learning tasks day by day. So they get measures, they learn, they teach, they learn the measures, they practice. So it's kind of a recreating and reshaping the whole learning journey for the newer learning generations. I just hope that this 5 simple steps, 5 simple model and the framework would give you a different insight of saying that how we could recreate our learning path for our learners. Adriana?
Thank you, Edmund. I mean, it's a very complete framework. It took you a while to explain it, but it's very complete. The thing that I enjoy a lot is that while you were explaining the framework, we were also seeing the trends that you explained at the beginning happening.
Yeah.
So it's a very integrated framework. Thanks. Kartik, I understand you also have a framework. I don't know if you could be able to summarize it.
Yeah, I think it's better if I summarize, because what Edmund shared is fairly holistic and I think quite well imagined itself. I think what I would probably say is not terribly off what or different from what Edmund had shared, Adriana, but as a framework, I think it's very important that all the different elements of learning are some way or the other accounted for when you're thinking about digital learning, right? So if you were to just maybe break the different parts into 3 things, the way we look at it is, 1, having efficient knowledge transfer. Typically speaking, we've seen companies also look at chat groups like WhatsApp and WeChat as ways to transfer knowledge. Now, that's great for downloading knowledge. It's not necessarily great for assimilating that knowledge. So I think knowledge transfer in the truest sense is the first starting point of digital learning. And I think in Edmund's lingo, it translated to what he called teach, right? And from there, I think some of the disciplines that you have to use, and they can be anything. I think there's no cookie cutter approach to this, but whatever discipline you use, it has to translate the knowledge transfer into a habitual way of learning that then results in retention. Because if we are able to habitually learn, right? Let's say, for example, I even want to learn a language, right? Let's say Spanish, for example. I'm only likely to be confident in applying what I'm doing if I'm able to retain it for a long period of time and such that it also becomes part of my muscle memory. And then the third application, or the third aspect of the framework that we look at, is application of learning. So from retention, how are you building confidence in the learner to then apply it on the job? And I think for all learning leaders in this in today's panel discussion, everyone will probably agree that application of learning continues to be the holy grail of making learning effective, along with, of course, translating that to business. So I think these three things, Adriana, knowledge transfer, retention, and application, are what we also, from a, let's say, framework perspective, look at. And I fully endorse what my colleague Edmund had to say on that also.
Great, thank you, Kartik. And this, I mean, this gives us an idea of what this framework is about and what do we have to take into account to make this happen. But it's a journey. I think it's a learning journey for all of us to make this work, and we can make mistakes. I mean, I'm sure all of us have made mistakes. And one of the things that we learn a lot on these panels and is when we talk about these mistakes. So I would love to see how can you guys help us know which mistakes we shouldn't make. Which mistakes do you think are those? What do you think, George?
Okay, would you like me to share some of the learning from our Digital Learning in Asia report on that one, Adriana?
Sure.
Okay. So we've done some research in digital learning. We've done it in 2018 and 2019. And we asked a whole lot of questions, but one of the questions was, what are the key barriers to the implementation of digital learning? And I'm going to cover two key elements of this. And the first one is that we see there are people with old mindsets. I see people, senior learning and development people in Malaysia, and they're applying the knowledge that they had and the models that they had from classroom learning and thinking that they're going to be successful, but they're not really taking into account the new world. Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book, and he said, what got you here won't get you there. And so the first mistake is to apply the old thinking to the new world. And the new mindsets are being driven by a couple of elements in the workplace. And the first one, it's around learner choice. And in the old days, not the old days, well, classroom won't go away. I don't want to denigrate classroom, it won't go away when we get over this current pandemic. But people have a choice of learning in a digital world. So you need to be engaging for your learners and useful. The second one is that so in other words, if I go back to this, learners no longer come to you, you go to learners. And the other one is there's a broad range of technology that we really need to come to grips with. And when we do choose the selected technology, we can actually become very effective. So new mindsets in a new world. I'd just like to talk about, rather than the mistakes, it's what are the things, the new mindsets and new skill sets that L&D needs to have in this new world of learning, in the digital world. Now, the first one is, I've already spoken about this. It's about understanding learners to add value to them. Steven Spielberg, if he got into digital learning, he would be highly successful, because Steven Spielberg does a huge amount of research into his audience so that he can understand how can he engage them, how can he attract them, how can he produce great movies. And in a similar way, once you've understood your learners, it's about how do we design useful and engaging learning journeys. And I think Edmund, I'm a fan of Learning Gym. and I love the way that they produce both useful and engaging learning journeys. Learning journeys that are useful but not engaging, people won't return. Those that are engaging but not useful won't be sustainable. But so therefore, it is that knowledge on how do I put together the building blocks, online and offline, of learning to make useful learning journeys. I say to people in learning and development, if I said to you that you have to become a marketer, what would you say? And a lot of them say, you know, I'd be running scared. I'll give you but one of the elements of learning, of being successful in L&D in a digital world, is you have to attract learners. I was talking to, we did some research, the same client we did research for, and I asked people who were not engaging in the learning, why didn't you engage? And they said, oh, look, L&D, they sent an email, but I didn't know what was in it for me. There was no reason for me to go to it. So there was, a marketer would say, what's in it for you? Another element would be, they said, I got an email, but I lost the email. So marketing of learning is critical. And it's looking at it in terms of campaigns. We've been involved in a very successful program, a learning program over here, digital learning, and it was headed by a guy who didn't come from an L&D background, but he came from a marketing background. Clearly, it's about being comfortable with technology. The structure of L&D will change over time. I was attending a conference and there was a guy who, very sophisticated in digital learning. He said, half of my people, half of the structure of my department has changed. Our own organization, as with all the organizations that are on the panel, the structure of their organizations have changed because we need people who feel comfortable with technology, who experiment with technology. And that is absolutely critical, to be able to play with the technology. And the last one is you need to have the right structure. You need to have the skills to engage with people at various levels. We have a major issue in many organizations in that the chief financial officer says, show me the money. And so therefore, and that becomes a major blocker. So the challenge is to be able to influence the C-suite, to influence learners to change habits, to influence managers of those learners. So the final point that I'll make is, so people are learning on the job. Instead of the manager saying, get on with your real job, it is for them to say, we understand that you're learning in the flow of work. So those are if you talk about mistakes, these are the competencies that L&D needs to develop in a new world of learning.
It's a wonderful study, and it makes you think again of many elements that probably we are not taking into account when we launch a digital solution or our digital learning. And probably, I don't know if any one of you guys have also an insight on this matter. Of the mistakes that probably we should be aware of not making.
Yeah, I think one quick thing I would like to add, Adriana, I think George made a lot of very insightful points, of course. A lot of times I think with digital learning, clients are making two different buying decisions. And I think that's having a challenge because, like George said, the learning has to come to the learner. That's only going to happen if you create a very unique learning experience. And for a learner, it doesn't matter whether, or he doesn't really care whether the learning experience is a platform or a learning experience is content. right? Learning experience is what he gets or she gets when you ask him or her to complete certain things which are going to upskill him or her on a particular role. But the problem or the mistake, I think, which a lot of companies are doing, and it's sort of legacy from the e-learning days, is first thinking about, I'm going to get this all-encompassing LMS, and then I'm going to fill it with thousands of courses. And hence, I'm going to look out for two different skill sets. I'm going to look out first for the platform guys who are going to give me a really great LMS. And then once I have something which I feel will do everything, of which maybe only 2% really gets used, then I'm going to go and look out for people who are great in creating content. Now, the problem is, and I think Vicky alluded to this earlier also, is that you get an experience which is one, not necessarily connecting with the learner because it's not contextualized, it's not specific. It's also very overwhelming, right? It's like going to a restaurant where there are 30 different cuisines being offered. Which one do you know is really one, the specialty of the restaurant? And what do you really feel like eating? You feel like eating a little bit of everything. So I think this dichotomy of approach of trying to go for a platform and then a content rather than the experience in its entirety and how the two things combine together is a mistake we see companies make, which I would encourage people to take a look at again.
Great, thank you, Kartik. Thank you, Kartik. What about you, Vicky? What have you found?
Well, in terms of that, I think what we've heard already has been really fantastic, and I completely agree. When we are developing together global paths for our clients, that's amazing. Today, the world, you can have in the same platform people like today, right now, from everywhere in the world, helping people learn. So I completely agree that it is about creating these learning experiences where we are involving people. And as Edmund says, it has to be fun. It has really need to be looking forward to what's going to be the next thing and the next thing. Like George said, it's Steven Spielberg, but now we're telling you a story, and it's a digital story. When you really want to know what's the next chapter, when you're so involved that people are talking about it, not they're offline. They're saying, hey, did you see what happened today? Hey, did you see this about, about this person or that person, or about what Kartik said or what Adriana? So, it's creating an environment that is not only online, but it goes offline to get people involved way, not only in a rational, but also emotional way.
Rational and emotional. Good points. Thank you, Vicky. Well, we have talked about many things so far, and Kartik, you mentioned a little bit about learning transfer, right? And you have had a lot of experience on that, and it would be very useful for us for you to show us how do we make digital learning transfer effective. You are muted.
Yes, I just realized. Mistake number 2.
Yeah, mistake.
So no, I think it's a very important question, and thank you for asking that, Adriana. I think again, I'm just going to build on what George said, that a lot of times managers are about show me the money, and obviously that's absolutely 100% true. I think from the learner's point of view, the problem is they come back and saying show me the time, with people asking the front line to constantly work and improve productivity. The fact of the matter is today people don't have time for anything except for work, and learning is, as we all know, for most people very low on the agenda or priority. And so what we get is a situation like the one you see in the screen, where you're effectively looking at your entire day from a work perspective, and the only downtime you really have in between work schedules is for 2 to 5 minutes. And in that respect, work feels a little like a dream. You just don't know when it started, when it ended. You just know you're doing work all the time. And hence learning transfer has to be in the context of saying, how can you get a person to come in and out of a situation when he is free, but keeping in mind that it's for 2 to 5 minutes more often than not, right? And what typically happens, Adriana, is that people are free during the course of the day, especially during work, for 2 to 5 minutes. about 10 to 15 times during the course of the day, right? That's just a statistical empirical evidence there. And what I feel companies can do, again, bringing back some of the point that our panelists have made, is look at different disciplines to bring the learning to the person and let the learner feel that there is no paucity of time, number one. And number two, also ensure that the experience draws the person to then build a habit. One of the ways in which we've done this at Inspire One using our micro-learning platform called Mastero is using a form of gamification which is known as hyper-casual games. These are actually games that last anywhere between 2 to 5 minutes. They're also games that don't really have a storyline. You just get in and get out when you have time to kill. And because you're doing this repeatedly, you're also in effect building a habit for learning. And for the organization, Adriana, it's giving them a lot of data on what and how are the people learning, and hence what are they still grasping or not being able to understand very well. So if you look at it, this is, for example, some data on learning transfer that an organization can get, where for a particular skill, right, let's take sales process or selling skills, you can get a good idea on the basis of repeated learning, what are the skills or competencies that people are struggling to understand, as well as what are skills and competencies that people are understanding very well. Now, there are 3 or 4 very important connotations to this. The first is, if I'm a trainer, and I agree with George that classroom training or facilitator-led training is not going away, nor should it. But if I'm a trainer, can I look at digital learning also to give me insights, let's say even before I train my classroom audience or the batch that I'm about to do a virtual training for? And hence, a data like this can give a lot of insight to a trainer to say, hey, let me not take the entire 1 hour of my Zoom session to focus on all the different aspects of selling skills. Clearly, I understand that opening a call is what most people are struggling with, and hence let me just double down my time and build a lot of depth to the content I'm going to take you through. So that is one implication from a trainer's point of view. The second is from the manager's point of view. I think George brilliantly said that learning has to be in the flow of work. And what we want to do is make sure that in a typical branch huddle or a manager huddle, which happens, let's say, every morning, you have 2 minutes of seeping in what the person or team is not being able to understand, and give that debrief to the team so that they're able to better understand that skill or competency or whatever be the case. So I think data points like this help to improve learning transfer as long as you're able to stick the right messaging for the different stakeholders. So the 3 key stakeholders, Adriana, that I think we should always look at, obviously at the heart of it is the learner. But equally important, I think, for digital learning has to be, what are we doing for the trainer, right? Or for the group of trainers or facilitators in the company or otherwise. And then the third is the manager. I think this is like a good, as we call it, tripartite view to make learning transfer more effective. I'm going to stop because it'll be great to invite our colleagues to get some feedback and views on what they're doing as well.
Sure. Sure. Is there any feedback regarding learning transfer?
Actually, I completely agree with Kartik on this one. Even with the framework that I previously mentioned, it absolutely is adjustable. It's very flexible. I might be designing on this whole selling skills on using this framework, but because of different group of people getting introduced to it with what Kartik just mentioned, could group A come into it? For those programs that we've designed, it's not necessary we have to focus the same learning point each time. It can be very flexible based on the information that we could gather online to do so. So this is a very critical message that we can gain, and well, advantage that we can take on digital learning. So that's just a comment.
It's an advantage. Thank you.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, many times we take content created in one country, and we just think that that content created in one country is going to impact the world. And that's not really true. What we see together in MoveLines, working with different countries, is that it also has to be culturally sensitive. It has to look at, how people learn in China, how people learn in Malaysia, how people learn in India, in Colombia, even in Latin America. We have different cultures between Latin America. So it's good to have this global outreach, but this very culturally adapted content. So everybody in the world can really have the same experience. What we see today is that many people complain that it's in English and only with subtitles in their own language. And then that doesn't create a very good experience for them. Or sometimes, again, it's not, whatever you see there, it's different from what, the way they like to learn. So we really have to look at a global thing, and this learning transfer becomes a way that you can almost feel that they're talking to me in my own way of thinking.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And how do you think we can do this? I mean, how can be very personalized to the learner?
Well, the idea is, again, if you buy a cookie cutter, you buy a cookie cutter content, this size fits all, that's very difficult to do. When you look at really having a digital learning solution is where all of these brains and of people, Kartik, Edmund, George, Adriana, all of us working together in the sense of creating a personalized experience for that company, for what they need to achieve, and making sure that happens. The way, for example, India tracks the learning and making sure they get to their goals, the way we gamify in terms of making sure that people are getting to those goals is so important. So it's not to have a cookie cutter anything. It's to really understand what is your pain today? What would you like to achieve with your people? And how can we make this happen in a way that is fast, that is measurable, and it is tangible?
Yeah, and talking on tangible and measurable, let's talk about results. At the end, our customers and companies are measuring also us by the results and measuring the digital learning by that. So what have been the results so far that you have seen with digital learning?
Well, in terms of that, we have seen many results. In fact, let me just share 1 second this presentation. And it is about, getting to 4 types of results, Adri. It's about creating return on expectations. I mean, what is the company expecting? Return on investment. Everybody talks about return on investment, and we really need to measure this, but it's not the only return. We also need to measure return on people, how people are engaging, having more fun, are really liking what they're doing, and they're changing behaviors, which is so important. This is why you do the learning. And return on sustainability. It is great to have results today, but you really want to have results over time. So it's not only one shot. We're doing this today, but then we see the results over time. So how can you create the 4 things? This is our passion in MoveMinds. How can we create the 4 things? And we do this for clients all over the world, with these programs, with these apps that have, as you said, have been recognized. And we love to see the people living the future today. Now going to all the technologies. And as all my colleagues have said, it's all about mindsets. Now, it's not about only, the content, but it's about the mindset. This is why we talk about agile, and agile is not good enough. We have to go to the next step, which is the see what's next mindset. So we talk about agile, see what's next leadership, or agile, see what's next sales, or, just focusing on what's the next step, what will get you to the future. Not only the success today, but, the see what's next mindset, what's going to happen next. And this has to do with moving people's minds, and measuring how they're doing in terms of those mindsets. So when we talk, for example, about the app and talking about results, this app, for example, helped Nestle triple sales in less than 3 months. Triple sales at a national level. Why? Because then people are engaged, and because it links learning with results. If you only do learning, they have to link learning with results. So this is also what all our colleagues have been talking about. And it's about making it fun, making it engaging, making it even beautiful. So many learning apps are so boring. So they have to have things that are attractive to people and to new generations, and also to not very new generations like me, that they really like to be engaged, that where they have places where they can learn, where they can share their learning, where they can even have safety. I mean, everything at the tip of their hands. That they can use it in a multi-level, even the computer, their phone, and get to results. And also to go to different environments in the same company. It is not the same thing to have learning for the factory, the corporate, the sales. So also to create this learning paths that are for the different people at the different levels, at the different areas of the company. That is so important. So yes, when we look at results, it's so important and so easy to see these results when they get measured. And when people play, they learn. We all learn that way. When we were kids, we were playing, and that's the way we learn about things. So imagine you have things like this where you can, have the learning, have the play. You can have things like safety crush where you're playing at the same time that you're doing the learning. Today, for example, we cannot go to an hotel and have this learning. So what we have created are virtual places where you can imagine you are in a real place, but you have the master sessions where you can go in and take a master session. Oh, no, I want to break out. So there's a menu of breakouts, and you can go like if you were going into different rooms. So get this experience of being live, but you are virtual. Or let's say I want to go to the experts corner. So then you get coaching or mentoring from different people in the organization. So it's to make this experience a real learning experience, that it has everything that has to do with digital gamification and machine learning, and of course, artificial intelligence, because that is going to be the next thing, and it's already here. Not many companies are using it. And also, when we're talking about machine learning and in interactive, we talk about avatars and how you can have interactive avatars.
I would like to ask you, what results have you seen by using this type of technology?
Well, for example, when you're doing recruitment, instead of, doing all these assessments where people can say, what would you do in a situation like this? Or I would do this, or I would do that. But you don't really know that they would do that in real life. So for example, we're using this with different companies like Heineken, like Uber, like Nestle, like Henkel, global companies with all my colleagues. And what we see is results are really, really fast because people can see in real time what would they do in different and complex situations, in safety, in sales, in leadership. You can do all types of things with the avatars to help people learn faster and take their mentality and their mindsets to a new level.
Great. And I understand also, Kartik, that regarding results, you have discovered a way to measure results.
Yep, that's right, Adriana.
Would you like to tell us about it?
Sure. I was wondering if you're going to lead me into it, or do I just start straight away?
Go ahead.
All right, cool. Thank you. No, I think results are, like Vicky said, I really like the model that she explained, where you have ROI, ROE, and then there were a couple of others which
ROS.
ROS and ROP, right?
ROP,
right.
yeah.
Correct. I think that's a really holistic way of measuring results, and definitely helps to cement the advantages that any form of digital learning can bring to different perspectives that business leaders really care about. So I think that's really, really great to see. Another way to also look at it, I think from whatever we've heard, our fellow panelists talk about, is I think everyone sort of talked about one aspect of digital learning, which is gamification, and how that can really help you improve the effectiveness of learning. And what is really interesting, Adriana, is that in the traditional sense, when people, even till today, continue to assess people, right? Take two people, right? You effectively give them the same set of questions, and based on how they respond to that question, you would assume that their level of understanding is, let's say, at 50%, at 60%, and what have you. To what Vicky is also talking about, I think the avatar approach probably does the same thing. The question of repeatability can come in when people really like the learning experience. And what gamification is able to do is help people take assessments or even practice the avatar role play that you just saw again and again and again. And what you see over here, fellow colleagues, is let's call it the tale of two salespeople. You'll notice what happens is if you do a traditional assessment, you'll probably realize that both salespeople understood the same amount on whatever knowledge check you were able to do. Right? If you look at it over here, the left at the left side, the first attempt that both salespeople took, they both got the same answer. They had like 20% success. But then, if you give them an opportunity to re-experience the entire assessment, you can see how very divergent their path is in understanding and ramping up their knowledge. And one of the ways in which Adriana companies are able to leverage this is to what Vicky was saying earlier, personalize the learning a little bit more. So if you have to give learning support to salesperson A or salesperson 1 versus salesperson 2, they both will probably require different sets of follow-up support. And as a result of this, what we've seen is a higher amount of probabilistic outcome that managers are able to see from a business standpoint. So for instance, managers are now able to say that if my sales rep understands, let's say, a particular product content better, he or she is able to, let's say, sell 30% more volume within the next 30 days. That's the level of data-driven insight that approaches like these and the avatars can provide to companies. And I think that is very different from what we have been used to expecting when it comes to business performance or business results from learning in the past. Right, so that's one thing that we're seeing and are really excited about, and I'd encourage everybody to try these different disciplines to see how more data can help you better link the learning outcome with the business goal.
Yeah, thank you, Kartik, and yeah, you're making a very good point. It's not only about the results that you're having in that a specific experience, but the data that you collect for future experiences, to leverage future experiences with the learners. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, we are almost finishing, but I would love to make a question to each one of you, and is if you could give one advice, like a very specific advice in regards with digital learning, what would this advice be? Who wants to speak first?
Let's start with George. He's the wisest.
Yeah, he's the wisest. I agree.
It's just, look, there's a lot of big learning from today, but I've forgotten the point that I was going to make, actually.
No worries. No worries, George. You can keep on thinking, and probably Edmund.
It's all right. I'll save you a bit.
Thanks. Thank you.
So, well, my advice to everyone is really, because digital world is quite different. The impacts, the influencing is very viral in some way, because if you've done something that is not as expected as good as you would, it might be a chaotic incidents that will happen in the corporate world. So very often that I'll tell my clients actually that aim small, miss small. What do I mean by that is actually saying that we will target a specific group that require a very specific learning, and there's the determinations, the personality of this particular group is at a higher level, at a newer generations of willingness to learn. When you make that group as examples, that kind of vibe will actually spread across the company as well. You need people to talk about the training they've been through, the fun aspect that they've gone through, the result that they have achieved. You know, with such a big group that you won't able to do that. But right at the beginning, start with something small and then hope for the biggest impact, and to influence others is the most easiest ways to do so. So very often, you know, when my clients have never had any experience in terms of digital learning, I'll say, let's find a group, you know, I'll make the magic works for you, and then we'll see how we do after that.
Great advice. Let's start. Let's just begin. Great, Edmund.
So George, are you
George,
back
are
in?
you ready?
Actually, I remembered it, but I think
to George.
thanks very much, Ed.
George.
You know, good one. Yeah, but I'm gonna swap that one that I remembered with another one. And I think it's be prepared to make mistakes, right? And be prepared for ambiguity. And there will be mistakes that are made, but we actually move forward by making mistakes. And if we're in an organization that doesn't tolerate mistakes, it's going to be very difficult to move forward in this world, you know. How's that, Edmund? All right?
Perfect.
Great advice.
Perfect.
Great advice.
Got to be brave, right?
Yeah. And there isn't a formula, you know? There isn't. Okay, great. Glad that you remember.
Yeah, I want to
Good
go
for
with
you,
George.
George.
I want to go with
Okay.
George, and you know, because my advice is be able to take risks, which goes with mistakes. Sometimes you take a risk, and it might, you know, be something that you're going to learn from. But when we talk about design thinking and innovation in all terms of the company, we say we have to be prepared to take risks, to do something different, you know, to take the company to the next level. But not only the company, yourself. No, take yourself to the next level. You know, take risks. Go for things that have worked all over the world, and then, you know, from there, you know, go to the next step. And in that sense, you know, the companies that are innovative today, those are the ones that are going to survive. And it happens at the personal level, at the team level, and of course, at the company level.
Thank you, Vicky. Great. What about you, Kartik?
Yeah, I think I'll keep it simple. Actually, that itself is a good advice, to keep things simple. But I think it's good to, look at digital learning in its totality, which means don't get too in love or infatuated with technology. Think equally about the talent and the capability that your team has, not just to procure something, but then also to run with it and sustain with it, and then to make sense out of it. I think a lot of times there's so many new things that are coming out there. It's very easy to get sidetracked and sort of think about that being the it thing to try out. I think it's important to understand that a lot of things in digital learning work which have been around and in existence for the last 10 years. And just because it's not new, doesn't mean it's not going to work. I think a lot of people in L&D have this interesting question of what have you done which is new today. Sometimes you can learn from the abacus just as well as you can learn from a computer. So I think that's my 2 cents on this.
Thank you, Kartik. I will also make a recommendation, and it's probably to have like, there is something that I like a lot from the Agile mindset, and is that not everything has to be perfect. Like you can come up with a minimum acceptable product and try it out and see how it goes with a small audience. It has to do a little bit of what you were saying, Edmund, but just go for it. So that would be my advice. We are almost finishing, but we always say this, and like if you want to stay tuned with us, we're receiving some questions about things that I really recommend that you stay a little bit more, because we received questions before in the registration, and we are receiving in the chat. So it would be great if you stay a little bit more, and I will make those questions to our panelists. So this question is from Daniela Gonzalez, and she's asking, how can we, as a learning community, onboard our learners and facilitators into these new ways of working and technology so we can leverage these implementations?
Okay, I'll talk about what we're doing with one major organisation in Malaysia. We're partnering with a London-based learning strategist, and it's to engage in action learning for quite a large learning and development team. And what we do is we give them a framework to move to plan and implement their digital learning. And I ask people in management, I said, have you got a framework for the implementation, for coaching? They say, yeah, I've got the growth framework. What about leadership? I've got situational leadership. I asked them, have you got a framework for the implementation of digital learning? So and they don't. So what we do is we give them a framework and put learning and development departments through action learning, whereby they actually are given principles, and then they apply those principles to develop prototypes of particular projects that they're working on. Yeah. So it's about learning by doing.
Exactly. And I also think it's about making it very easy for people to log in, to experience, if you make it hard, if it's complicated, if it's not, an engaging experience, they will, log in and log out really fast. So as everybody has said in this panel, it has to be very engaging, very easy. And as Edmund was saying, it has to become a culture of everybody saying how fun, how great, how this is really helping them. And it should come even from the onboarding, even before they are part of the company. Imagine that you just got selected to work at X and X company, and this company sends you a hello. Welcome to this company. And, let me tell you about the story about the company you're going to join. So your journey starts even before you start working in the company, the whole onboarding experience. It has to go through the whole time you are in the company, and it can even be after you are in that company. So really taking care of your people from the get-go to all their learning paths. And something that we all talk about is building your own career, so people can know that they are the owners of their learning experiences.
Actually, I would like to make a comment onto that as well. This actually refers back to quite previous George was just saying that we very often that we are our focusing is on our learners, but in order to make this digital learnings happens is actually the internal people that we have the people that are actually sitting here watching this panel. Don't forget that we ourselves need to get trained as well. We need to learn technology. We need to learn new skills in order to make whatever we want to make to happen as well. George being one of the widest guys in the world, and to be honest, he has never stopped learning until this date. He is one of the most aggressive learners that I've ever seen. To be honest, that makes him one of the reimagining individuals that I would say in this panelist, that we keep ourselves sharp at this very point as well. So it's very essential for us to do that as well.
I love how you complement each other. Really, it's very inspiring.
This has
Thanks,
been an
Edmund. I made the
amazing
I made the down payment before this. I'll complete the payment afterwards.
Okay. And this is a question from Carla Montemayor. She's asking, what do you specifically do for knowing and identifying learners' needs?
So in my point of view, it's very important to start with an assessment, to really understand what the company wants, but then to not just run with what the managers are telling you or HR is telling you. But it's very important to do a wide assessment in the company to understand where they are today, what is their mindset today, what are they thinking, what are their needs, and then start designing what is going to become their learning path. And I'll leave you to the next experts, because I know all my colleagues have bright things to say about this.
Well, we talk about human. Go, Kartik, you go.
Sure. Thanks, George. No, I also just want to build on what Vicky is saying in a lot of ways. I think the same approach that we looked at, Carla, a lot of those approaches can start first from understanding what is the skill gap in an individual. And one of the largest logistics companies in the world actually took that approach and said, before we really know what the delivery executive needs to know, we need to understand what is the current capability, both from a functional perspective as well as from a behavioral perspective. And a lot of what we have all shared from our collective experience can as much be leveraged from understanding what is the current requirement, and hence what are the gaps in the competencies, and then be extended to also then saying, okay, now that you know that the competency gaps are in the specific areas for these individuals, let's leverage the same digital learning technique to address those gaps as well. So it's really in a way a chicken and egg situation, right? Would you start first with the development, or do you start first with the assessment? And if you really think about it, a lot of times assessment is the way to develop. I know in India, at least, if I can say, Vicky, a lot of people improve their competitive exams or pass their competitive exams, not by going through coaching classes, but just by taking more and more assessments. I know in the United States, perfecting your SAT scores is pretty much the same thing. So yeah, I think some of these techniques that all of us have shared, the avatar approach, and some of the things that even Edmund talked about, are fantastic ways to start first from just understanding what the knowledge gap is. I hope that helps.
Look, I'll just add one other thing. Human-centered design thinking is going to play a much bigger role in the world of digital learning. And we talk about two sets of needs. It's the functional needs, what are the skills gaps, but what are the emotional needs? You've got, Edmund spoke earlier about, younger learners, but there are learners of different ages. So what do they feel comfortable with? Are they comfortable with technology? How do you make them more comfortable with technology? Do they prefer print? Do they prefer reading do they prefer video? So human-centered design is really understanding them at a functional level, but at an emotional level, what do they feel comfortable with? And that requires, the first stage of design thinking, develop a deep empathy for your learners. Just go in there and understand them, both through the survey, but actually go and talk to them as well. Do your focus groups, understand them. The big word is, if any consultants here, if you want to make a lot of money, you become a learning ethnographer. There you go. Learning ethnographer.
Yeah, we learned two, right? Ethnographer and reimagineer. That's it.
Those are two SAT words right there.
You're increasing our vocabulary, George. Thank you so much for that.
New words every day.
Yeah. Okay. So I would love to encourage our audience to share in the chat which outcome did you get from this panel. It could be a word, a sentence, it doesn't matter. We would love to hear your comments And I'm very, very excited of having this wonderful family of panelists. And I talk about family because, as you see, we have fun. We have fun, we share, we learn. So thank you so much, George, the wise guy, uh, right? Edmund, Vicky, and Kartik for joining us. And thank you to all the audience. We would say goodbye for now, but hopefully we would have another panel very soon. So goodbye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Adriana. Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks.
Everyone.